All right, so this one is about as straightforward as it gets. This is my Gremlins deck, and I have two variants, an Asher's variant and a non-Asher's variant. Personally, I found my Asher's variant isn't as good, so I'm going to focus mostly on the base version. We can come back to the Asher's variant afterwards. So this is a Kiasyd deck, very focused on making sure we have superior Mytharia, or however you pronounce that discipline. I'm terrible at saying it. It is mostly focused on having an Arcadian in play, who is going to give you a built-in Gremlins that costs the blood. But also we're running 3 copies of Isin. Very, very good vampire for 6, has all disciplines at superior, can occasionally give you an extra master phase action when you need it. Followed up by Ome, also a very good vampire. The cost reduction is super relevant in this deck with the cards that it plays. Fairy Dema is the kryptonite in this deck. This is the card that shows up all the time and I never really want. She costs 8, so she's not eligible for grooming. And she has an ability that's less useful. Just don't really want her. And then Roderick Philip March, because he's a decent vampire. The reason, though, we have it like this is we do, from time to time, actually get most, if not all, of the crypt out. And it can be relevant to have a bigger vampire in play with the unlock. So every once in a while, she is not relevant. And the reason that you can play these kind of onesie vampires is we are playing Great Symposium. It's a great Kiasyd card. This card lets you search a crypt for one of them, put them in your uncontrolled region, and then just put a 3/3 blood on one of them. So when you're in that situation where you need her ability, you can just simply go get it. No problem. No questions asked. Going down from there, we've got a couple of capitalists, 4 to be exact. This is a card that gives you a blood when you successfully bleed. Have to be Sabat, though, to play it. Very, very good card, though, overall, because we're going to be doing a lot of that. Playing 2 copies of Changeling Ward. This card also very good with the Kiasyd. Very, very useful card for a large number of purposes. Mostly to keep your biggest Kiasyd fairly safe from anything that could happen to it. But also increases the cost of masters that get put on it, etc. Oh no, actually, I'm sorry. This is not for masters. Correct me. I will correct myself before somebody else does. But it can cancel an action that is coming at you. So very useful. And then the aforementioned grooming. Grooming is really good in this deck. I've had a lot of arguments about whether or not this deck should have govern instead. I assure you that after all the playing I've done, the action economy you lose on govern hurts too much, and you're rarely ever in a situation where you are desperately hoping for pool. When the deck is going, it's going. And if you can't survive, then you weren't going to survive in the first place, even if you governed as many vampires as you want. And then 1 copy of Thanks for the Donation. And I hate that I need to play this card. And I hate that I need to play this card because there's another deck running around that's just the Obtenebration deck. And it plays Ome. It plays Arcadian. And it plays Isin. And so periodically, you're going to want to Thanks for the Donation. You just want to drop it in play and leave it there and force your prey to pay for your card. Annoying that you need this, but it is what it is. For bleed buff to go along with our 12 Gremlins, which are basically a bleed, a +1 bleed, a +1 stealth. Incredible card. Very basic, very straightforward, does what it wants. You can look at the first 2 abilities and be like, I could use them. Burning an equipment that isn't a melee weapon is relevant, but most often you're not going to care. With that bleed package, we got bonding. 10 copies of it. Sounds like a lot. We don't want to bleed for more than 3 in this deck. That is the rule of this deck. You don't want to have a Vampire Archon, and having a Vampire Archon sucks. You also don't want to end up ousting your cross-table ally accidentally because you bleed for too much. Bleed at 3, fine with me. Usually fine with your opponent, but you don't have a way to cancel it if something goes wrong. Run bonding. Very easy. 6 copies of Seduction. Nice and easy cyclable card. Stops the vampire you want to get into combat most from blocking. It's perfect in this deck. absolutely. Stone Travel as well, another great card here. Having that superior ability to cancel combat with +1 stealth, oh, it's so magnificent. And it isn't even a end combat, it is a cancel combat before the block. Wonderful. Fey Contortion is great versatility if you do happen to get into combat. Cancel a grapple card when you need to cancel a grapple card. Maneuver when you need a maneuver. And gain a stealth when you need a stealth. This card does so much in this deck. Ore Absorption is kind of similar. It's a stealth when you need a stealth. It's an intercept when you need intercept. It's a good card. You're rarely going to use the intercept. I mean, extraordinarily rarely. It's going to be real circumstantial if you need that. But sometimes it does come up. The real meat and the potatoes, though, comes in our reactions. We are playing 4 copies of Fairy Wards, and this is a big risk, big payoff card. We're only running 8 caps at our highest, which can mean that sometimes this card is just really bad. You're playing against, you know, Girls Will Find or a number of other 11 cap decks. You're going to be a sad person with these cards in your deck. But when you're not, this card is a grand champion. It is only usable if an ally or younger vampire is taking a D action against you or a card you control. At inferior, the action fails. At superior, the action fails and they don't unlock. Sure, you have to lock to do it and pay 2, but you're basically killing 2 actions from whoever it is that's doing it to you, most likely your predator bleeding. Even if you do this against some of the most mundane of actions, that can sometimes be enough to really change the game for you. I've been very impressed with Fairy Wards overall. Playing 3 copies of Philip and 3 copies of On the QV. This is a nice thing because one of the things that we want to be able to do is use Ome with these Fairy Wards when we have small enough vampires. And Philip gives us the ability to have Arcadian do what it needs to do, and still use an extra unlock, and have a spare on the QV for when we need an on the QV. It's really a good combination of things. I think more people should evaluate whether or not Philip works in their decks with some of their vampires as opposed to on the queue, because it just gives you a lot of reach in those particular cases to be able to have the same vampire maybe bounce the same bleed in the same turn, or play the reaction cards that you need that maybe aren't eligible for anybody else. I would suggest people actually take a look at this card, rethink this card just a little bit. And lastly, our combat package is Absorb the Mind. I was previously running Earth Swords as well. If you don't know Earth Swords, this is it. It is a 3 range damage card for this deck, 2 ranged if you have inferior. It actually was pretty beneficial with the Earth Swords. There were a lot of situations where people had to rethink blocking simply because they might lose 3. I went this route because this is a little bit more in the vein of versatility. You have a dodge that you can do here. You have a Steel Blood that you can do. Maybe the discipline thing comes up, maybe not. So I went with this because occasionally you'll want the dodge, but sometimes I'd still rather have the Earth Swords. Still kind of on the fence with it, but I'm trying this rendition out for a little while. The Asher's version basically cuts a lot of the numbers of cards down pretty significantly. We go to 7 Gremlins, 8 Bondings, 4 Seductions, 4 Stone Travel, blah, 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 blah. A lot of this becomes just, we want to churn cards quickly, and then we want to Ashers quickly. We're basically trying to turn the 60 card deck into a faster version of the deck that is also going to, you know, basically get you still at 70 cards roughly, considering the 3 Ashers you have to lose for every 13 you shuffle back in. Otherwise, most of the deck remains unchanged aside from adding a couple Parthenons. I still don't think this is the best way to do it, but it is what it is. When I last played this deck, it performed really well and really quickly, but we ran into the problem of basically still ending up decked because you are still funneling cards really fast. All in all, though, I think either version of this deck is a incredibly good deck. I managed to make it to a top 5 in a tournament, losing mostly to my own kind of stupidity. But I really do enjoy the way this deck plays. It's very solid. It is a very new player-friendly deck. It doesn't punish new players for playing it. if you want a deck that's easy, you want a deck that's fun, you want a deck that can win, this is the deck. Maybe even better than Malk 95. Thanks.